The chair now calls on Ms. Brownley for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to Washington, Mr. Shirley, and thank you for being here to testify today. As you mentioned, the Fish and Wildlife Service is one of the 3 federal entities responsible for implementing the MMPA. Mr. Shirley, can you explain how your agency currently assesses marine mammal stocks under the MMPA?
Yeah, that is a great question and something I was trying to allude to in the prior questioning of how we collect that data. And again, very extensive when you're talking marine mammal stock, and the service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, is in charge of 10 of those stocks with the species under the act that we're have ultimate responsibility with. So most of the other stocks are all set in NIMP's priorities there. So, but with the service, we're dealing with polar bears, walrus, sea otter, and manatee specifically. And inside that, we have 10 stocks that we're constantly trying to evaluate and make sure we have the best and most reliable data that we have. That takes a lot of work, and marine mammals are one of those that we do. We constantly are trying to use models, the best models that we can find and available, to make sure that we're getting the best estimates, if you will, of those populations. And it's hard to come up with a specific answer to your question as far as how we assess that, but it's no different than other species, and using those models is something we've done in the past.
So, and as you know, this discussion draft would raise the threshold for assessing the health of marine mammal stocks, and in my opinion, effectively strip protections from marine mammals when that higher data threshold isn't met. So does your agency have any estimate of how many marine mammal stocks lack the level of data that would be required under this reauthorization to continue receiving the same MMPA protections?
That is a great question, and one that I would ask if I could get back to you on the specific data there. I'm not positive. Again, with us, the bottom line with all of the consideration here is our role and our goal of making sure that those populations are sound and that we're conserving those for future generations.
Thank you for that. You know, I'm a little concerned that this discussion draft, there wasn't really any serious consideration, and I'm worried what the impacts would be on America's conservation framework, which is a particular shame, as the MMPA and Endangered Species Act are regarded as the gold standards for conservation worldwide. So speaking of ESA, we dedicate quite a bit of time in this committee discussing this act. My colleagues across the aisle like to claim that the ESA is failing and often point to the fact that only 3% of listed species have been successfully delisted. But they conveniently ignore a significant barrier. Congress has consistently underfunded the ESA, making it harder for agencies to carry out the final stages of recovery. And yet, despite all that hand-wringing, this committee continues to entertain legislative proposals that would, like this MMPA draft, weaken proactive management and force more species into crisis before protection can kick in. So, Mr. Shirley, would you agree that the lower thresholds in this MMPA reauthorization discussion draft would lead to more marine mammals ultimately being listed under the ESA?
There's a lot wrapped into what you just said, and I appreciate the context of what it's and how you share it. Again, because I think there's some commonality amongst the committee, amongst the service, amongst the American people, that the last thing we want to do is put these species in peril or at risk. And I think we can find ways that doesn't happen. In fact, I know we can. We've been a nation of being able to do that, and that's what I hope we can continue to work on, is find common ground that we can continue to move forward with some of these species.
Well, Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate your sincerity, it sounds like, and I do, it is very concerning, again, because I think we're understaffed in terms of MMPA, and we know quite clearly that the Endangered Species Act is also underfunded as well in terms of its implementation. And so I don't want, mammals to go from one place to the next place, and in either place, they're not fully protected. So that's my concern, and I appreciate that, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Yes,